Yes, is that. So we're all looking forward to your talk. And the title, Inference Maximization with Limited Social Network Information, Seeding High-Degree Neighbors.
Yeah, long name.
Please.
Okay, thank you, Inka, and thank you for being here. So today I'm going to talk about kind of an interdisciplinary project. So me and Vincent and Arlott, we are from the Department of Sociology. And then Deb, I think maybe some of you know him. He's working in the Department of Information and Computing Science. So indeed, this is kind of and cooperation between these two departments for a project that is funded by NWO. So as you can see from the title, today we are going to talk about the inferences maximization under the scenario that we don't have the complete network information. So just a recap of the idea, okay, the idea of inferences maximization in, how we can use this idea in a social experiment for energy transitions. So a bit of background, like why as social scientists we are interested in this topic is because maybe you are aware that in Netherlands by 2050, all the household here we need to get rid of gas. So it means that we have around 13 years to get rid of gas. So it means that, okay, in the household level or individual level, we need to make a lot of change regarding how we cook or regarding like how we heat our home. So it's kind of a social problem here because it means that if you need to motivate a majority of the population to make a big change of their life, what can you do? What can you do to smooth the transition? So one idea that we have here is by combining the social contingents and the inferences maximization here. So this graph kind of shows the big idea behind this. So imagine that you are living in a neighborhood. So what we are going to do is we try to have kind of survey and interview whatever, try to understand in this neighborhood how people think about energy transitions. And then after that, you can have kind of a network of opinion. There's like a network of people with different opinions about energy transitions and how these people are connected to each other. Then you can identify, that is like, for this network, try to identify who are the important people, who are the influencers in the network. This is indeed the seed in the inferences maximization problem that is like for these big populations, which small groups of people you want to use as seed to fasten the transitions. And then later you try to activate this identified seed, and then activate means that, okay, by convince them to change how they heat their home, to convince them, okay, they want to take the lead in terms of the energy transitions. And by these people being the early adopters, we hope that, okay, in the whole populations, we can accelerate the transition, meaning that this type of new way of living can be adopted by more people in the whole neighborhood. So as you can see, technically speaking, behind this big idea is, okay, this part is quite important. That is like, how can we find out a bunch of important people in the neighborhood that we can use to kick off the approval process? This is that is indeed the background of the inferences maximization problem. And when we try to kind of really use this idea in the field, of course, we encounter some challenge here. And one you can imagine here is, okay, if you think of the first step, that is collect the social network data, is already quite challenging. So in some neighborhoods in Netherlands here, we try to do some social network survey that is asking people try to provide us their social network. That is not how well you know your neighbor, which neighbor do you know on your street, how often do you interact with them. This kind of data is indeed quite difficult to get. So out of the survey that we distributed here, as you can see, the gray bar means that the people never return us the survey. So 66% of people refuse to answer this type of quite sensitive or intrusive privacy problem, even though we try every means we can, such as giving the coupon bonus car, knocking their door. So in the so what we get is kind of an incomplete network based upon the 44% response survey. So we realized, okay, the network information is really difficult to collect. So if you look back on the literature, of course, we have a lot of really nice work about inferences maximization, such as the greedy algorithm, the CLF, or the K-core, like just to name a few. But they all based on the condition that you have access to the full network information. And as we experience in the field, this is nearly impossible, meaning that you can, yeah?
No response is also some information, isn't it?
No response means that they didn't give us back the survey, so we don't know their social network.
Well, I could imagine that responsiveness is higher among people who read the newspaper, who talk to their neighbors, and so on.
Yeah.
So there is a relation.
Yeah, of course. But then we have no guarantee that the social network that we built here is correct, because a lot of people, they didn't return us the survey. And even though for those 30% people who give us back the survey, you can imagine such as recall error and the other mistakes, maybe it's also they don't want to give us the complete list of contact. The information you cannot say, you don't have confidence to say that it's going to be 100% accurate. So this is, we are quite critical about the data that we got. So we are thinking, okay, then can we have kind of a seeding strategy that is not so demanding regarding the network information? And then before we go into our own study, we also look a bit in the literature, what is available there. So of course, this challenge of incomplete network information is not exactly new. So by far, there are two strands of strategy. The first one here is just say, okay, what if we just have a few seed more, a few more seeds, that is increase your seeding budget. Say like, if you have the full network information, of course, you can do the optimal seeding. That is like by using those fancy algorithms, you can give a standard answer, say, okay, I'm going to seed income, I'm going to seed Vincent within this room, so that at the end of the day, most of you in this room will say yes to energy transition. That would be the ideal case if you have the nice network information. But what if like, if you don't have any information, what you can do is just whatever, I just choose 3 person in this room randomly and see after I activate them, what happened at the end. That is the only way that you can do. But this idea, what we try to argue here is that we are still doing the random seeding, but let's have a few more seed. That is not instead of seeding 3 people in this room, I'm going to seed 5 people. That is increase your seeding budget a little bit. And then you try to compare the scenario with A and C and try to see which one is better. So in this simulation study using the SIR model, what they find out is that, okay, random seeding with additional seed indeed can lead to a larger diffusion outcome than the optimal seeding, just for a small amount of additional seed. So it seems that, okay, in the case of simple contingent, even though you don't have the full network information, it's really not a big deal. What you need to do is, okay, maybe ask your fundraiser, ask your project manager to give me a little bit more budget so that I can seed a few more individuals. So this is the case in simple contagion. And then another strength of the strategy is, okay, although we cannot have the complete network information, but let's be realistic, but use what we can collect in terms of the network information with reasonable time and effort. That is like maybe I still do some effort or survey to collect the network information, but it's not that intensive and it's still manageable and feasible in a way. So for example, here in a public health experiments, what the health worker they do is they try to increase the uptake of multivitamins and their tolerance for water purifications in I think around 19 villages in Central America. They also make the compromise in terms of the network information. That is, they're not aiming to collect the complete network information. So the seeding strategy that they use here is, first one, of course, is the random, which have no requirements of the network information. And then the second one is by common reasons. I should see the people that here are the most popular one, the people in this whole neighborhood that knows most people. This is kind of our institution should be the influencer in the communities. And then the third one is what they call as the one hub. That is indeed the nominated friends of the random villager. So it's inspired by the friendship paradox. Basically, it's a three-step process. So first, you find a few random people in the village, and then you ask each random people to nominate one of their friends to provide you one name of the friends they have in the village. And then out of the nominated friends, you just use them as the seed. So this is a really simple idea of the one hub. And as you can see, it didn't require, it's not so demanding regarding of the network information, at least compared to the survey that I did in Netherlands. They are not asking people to provide the researcher the fullness of their contact. And let's see, like, what is the outcome in terms of the multivitamins uptakes. After they try these three type of strategies, the one hub is the best, random is in the middle, and surprisingly, high degree is the one that is the worst, is indeed the worst strategy that you can think of. And in terms of the multivitamin, the diffusion process, if you look at the contagion mechanism behind it, it's a bit more like the simple contagion because this type of multivitamin is kind of given up as a coupon and is free to the villager to use. They can only, what they need to do is just redeem the coupon and then they can get the multivitamins from the local drug shops. So it spread more like a simple contagion process. But for the water purification here, we cannot tell the differences between these three strategies, meaning that, okay, indeed, you cannot tell which one is better. Or you can say that none of them works that well in this case. And for water purification, is indeed like involves a deeper behavioral change because after the villagers, they have this new type of, they have the coloring. They also need to change quite a lot in regarding their daily practice. That is not they need to use it day by day. It's a bit more complicated and they need to change their long-standing practice and belief. So in this case, it looks more like a complex contagion process. So after a quick look in the literature, the conclusion or the status is that, okay, for simple contagions, complete network information is not a must. So you can still do a nice seeding work without complete network information. But this is not the case for complex contagion. Then it needs to our work, like the work that between me, Vincent, and Deb here, That is now we try to have before we test the idea in the field, we have a simulation study, try to search for more efficient strategies for complex contingents under the precondition that you cannot have much control regarding the information that you collect. After testing quite a few strategies, we find that this new strategy, we name it as the One Hub HD, works quite well. So as you can tell from the name, it's quite similar to the traditional One Hub strategies. The differences is that, okay, after you have the nominated friends, instead of directly using them as seed, you try to have a step forward, take one more step. That is like find out among these nominated friends who are the most connected, who are the one that in this community are the one that are most popular.
Connected just among the friends.
Sorry?
Connected just among the nominated friends.
No, in the whole neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you will seed those most connected nominated friends. This is the idea of the new strategy. And for example, in this network, how we realize is, okay, say the seeding budget that you have here is 3, 5, or 10%, meaning that, okay, out of this community to kick off the diffusion process, you can seed maybe 3% or 5 or 10% of the people. And what you do is first, you draw 50% of the random nodes, which is the blue dot here, and then ask them to nominate one of their friends. So, and then you will have a set of random neighbors, the purple dot here. And after that, out of the nominated friends, try to find out which of them are most popular in the whole population. This is indeed the highest degree nominated nodes, and then they will use a seed. So this is how you realize it in a social network. Yeah.
Do you know whether people, when they're asked to nominate a friend, whether they're likely to select something at random?
We won't here. They will just randomly nominate it. So it's a random process.
But in the other experiments that you did you look at like how people decided who they chose, who they nominated?
I think for that public health experiment, it is also random, saying that they won't ask, or they won't give the guideline like which type of friends you nominate. You just need to provide me one name of people you know in the village. Yeah, so it's the same principle. And we tested this strategy with the traditional One Hub in both the online and offline social network. And here, these two are new. And the first one is the no 13 HD. So the HD here means that it's kind of a high degree seeding strategy, but it's also kind of limited regarding how much network information you can have. So here, first you will draw 30% of the random nodes, and then those random nodes will disclose their degree. And then you will choose the highest S degree nodes to use as seed. This is what we call as no 30 high degree seeding. And then this is a cluster seeding strategy because it's kind of a typical idea when we mentioned the complex contingent cluster seeding is quite a well-recognized method. And so that we also text it here. So we also based upon the precondition that you only know the degree of 30% people, and then you will choose the one with highest degree and its neighbor as the seed, so that you will end up with a group of connected people to use as seed. So this is the other two strategies that we tested in our simulation. And first, I only show you these two graphs here. The first graph here, because it's a complex contingent problem, so it's a first we will assign threshold to the whole population from low to high value, and then the y-axis here is kind of the final activation. That is like if you seed 3% of people, how many people you can activate at the end is going to be from 0 to 100%. And then from this different color bar, we can combine, okay, out of 10,000 ones of this strategy, each of these strategy in the same network, what is the outcome? And we can see that for a small offline network here, such as here we use a high school friendship network. The 1-hop HD is indeed performs the best, like at least in most of the threshold here. And its performance is even better if you look at large online social network, such as the Facebook network, which is a bit similar to a scale-free network when you have hubs and a few highly connected nodes.
Sorry, could you?
Yeah.
This explained a little. Could you say again what is pictured?
Which one? Sorry.
Well, the diagrams, I only now see that you explained a little bit. Say again what the graphs mean. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same. The only differences here is the underlying network is the high school network, which is a small offline network. And this one is 4,000 people Facebook friendship network. So because we texted in the 10 network here, and I'm only showing the typical network as a small offline network and a large online network here.
But the only difference is the parameter m, it seems. So the size is different, but the only other difference is the parameter m, which is?
The m here is the modulity. That is like how well connected the network is. And the key differences between these two, of course, is the size and also the network topology. So for this one, the high school network is a bit more similar to the small world network. And this Facebook network is indeed quite similar to a scale-free network. So we realize, okay, of course, how well a seeding strategy works also depends on the network topology. That is like how the nodes in your network are connected to each other. And we are glad that at least for this strategy, it was at least better than the others in this type of these two type of quite different network.
And what is the meaning of threshold?
Oh, the threshold here is kind of an idea we use to reflect the idea of context contagion. So if my threshold is 0.5 here, meaning that if I have 10 friends, 10 contacts here in this room, and if 5 of them agree to get rid of gas, I will also do the same thing.
Oh,
So
okay.
that is kind of the threshold for me to change according to the actions of my neighbors. Yeah. So when we look back at why this strategy was all right is because the seed that is selected has two nice properties, which is being high degree as well as being partly connected. Go deep into it, and this is kind of the last key finding I want to share with you. So if you mind the first strand of seeding strategy, that is not just a few seeds more, you can argue with me saying, okay, like if you compare the 1-hop HD with the traditional 1-hop or the random, these two strategies, they require much less information than the 1-hop HD I am proposing. So can I argue that if I also use the same principle as what we talked the first strand of the seeding strategy, that is like if for the 1-hop or the random, I can seed more, I can just have more seeding budgets. Is it still necessary for me to do the extra step of the 1-hop HD? So we tested this idea as well. So we compare the seeding outcome of the 1-hop HD with what we call the 1-hop 1.5. That is like for the 1-hop strategy, they can seed 50% more people. So instead of seeing 10 people, they can see 15 people in their case. And then the random two is, okay, I then allowed it to increase the seating budget to 20 people. And then we compared, okay, this type of strategy still in the 10 network that we are testing here. I won't go into the details, but here the y-axis is kind of the differences in the absolute value of the diffusion, the activated fraction. So even though the one hop and the random, they can increase the seating fraction much more. In the case of complex contingents, network information is still quite important in the sense that even though you can increase the seating budget, you are still the outcome of the one hop HD is still better because this type of network information is still quite essential to achieve a better outcome. I guess I only have 1 or 2 minutes for a question, but if you want to ask me more, you feel free to flash me during the break afterwards, or you can ask me now. Yeah. So that's it. Thank you. Yeah.
We have time for some questions.
Have you ever considered if the threshold is not uniform?
Yeah. The threshold is uniform in the whole population.
Yeah, so have you sort of considered what if it isn't? Because I don't think
Yeah.
everyone is as
Yeah.
easily
Convinced.
convinced.
Yeah, agree. We try to do that. We try to test it, but it's a bit difficult because if you combine the two variables at the same time, that is for every individual, your network position is random and also your threshold is random. It means that the simulation case you need to run is growing exponential. Meaning that, okay, in order to have a converged solution, why not I run 10,000 case for each network, for each seeding strategy. If you combine these two variables together, it's going to be at least maybe 100,000. So we didn't test it, but it's a real concern. Yeah, it's a limitation that we recognize.
I had a question about sort of an earlier slide about the just a few seats more.
Yeah.
Because you said that sort of just a few seats more just does better than optimal.
Yeah.
And I was wondering how you define optimal in this case, because in this influence maximization, you have sort of the confluence between your budget of how many people you influence and what it leads to.
Yeah.
So I can imagine if I put a bigger budget, doesn't optimal do as well as just
the comparison is always we try to make it fair by saying that every two strategy they are going to start from the same seeding budget. Like they're going to starting from 3%, 5%, or 10%. And optimal seeding is indeed is the best solution. Just after you have the full network information, you will run the algorithm to find out the best solution for that specific seeding budget. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
I'll ask you.
Okay.
I'll have more details in the break.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
I guess the research to figure out which ones are the more connected seeds, does that go into the budget?
No, that's different. But we are argue here, the extra budget that we use to collect the network information should always be reasonable. Because I didn't mention in my talk, indeed, there are also a few other ideas how to do it, but we think that the cost is a bit too high. It's quite, in our sense, it's quite demanding, at least we cannot use it in our own social experiments.
Because like I can imagine either advertising on TV or paying a YouTuber to show something so they get a lot of impact, but that kind of cost would also not.
Yeah, that kind of cost is kind of the activation cost is indeed we didn't consider here yet. We first try to find out who are the best one to start with.
Last question.
Yeah, it's a short question.
Yeah.
So when you say you did a simulation, you mean you built an agent-based model? Yes.
A structural model. Really sim is also kind of an agent-based model, but the variable or the parameter of each agent is quite simple. I only give them a threshold. Once the threshold is reached, they're going to adopt. Yeah.
I was going to ask.
Okay.
Talk about it later. I'm sure there are more questions about the model.